Is there a favorite day that sticks out?
It's funny. I was thinking about that. And there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times when I've just been overwhelmed with the fact that I'm allowed to stand in the places that I stand.
Right.
But one that sticks out, which is just the funniest thing, is our basic. We get in basic training, and they gave us uniforms and boots and all the stuff, and they're herding us through, and they gave me my name tapes. And I saw my name, at the time in ACU, grandma's couch, got patted in there.
Yeah.
I was just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to do this.
Yeah.
I have the honor to serve here, and that sticks out for me. Very, very mundane thing.
Right.
I remember that a lot.
Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and today I have a special guest. He wouldn't think he's special, but I think Brian is super special. Brian Marx. I've known Brian for quite a while now, dating all the way back to 175. I knew Brian when he walked in the door at 175 in ACO. It's scary to say, but it was many years ago. I remember all the leaders at that time. I was probably a squad leader at about that time. Yeah, and we all kind of gather when new guys come in, and I remember we gathered around and we go, who's the giant old dude? And somebody said, he's a commo guy. He's going to the commo shop. And I was like, man, I'd like to have him in my platoon as a machine gunner because he's just a mass of a human being. And I always liked having older guys because they've lived a little bit of life and we're ready to take on roles of leadership much faster. But Brian's a great friend of mine. I love Brian to death. I'd do anything for him, and I'm glad he came on here today. Brian came in the Army when he was 40, right? And he's been in the Army for about 12 years now. So I'll let you guys do the math of where Brian's at now in his life, and I'll hand it over to him and let him introduce himself, and we'll get on with the conversation.
So I'm old. My name is Brian Marx, and I grew up in a small town called Chester, West Virginia, in the very northern panhandle, about 35 miles outside of Pittsburgh. Very uneventful upbringing. My parents divorced when I was very young. Split up, and one in Pittsburgh and one there in West Virginia. So I got the a little bit of both worlds, and just again a good upbringing, even with the split home.
Yeah,
everything was good. I learned early on that people like sports, and they like it when you do sports. So I did a lot of that. Yeah. Growing up, football and track and basketball and all things, and went on did some of that in college. Thought I was really good. I was not. I was good for my pond, but when you got out into larger, it wasn't that great. Got hurt playing ball, and then found I had to shift gears really quick and went into the hospitality industry, as so many of the best and brightest and the laziest do.
Yeah.
And it turned that into a pretty decent career for 20 years or so, and then decided that I should join the Army.
That's quite a story, and I know you're skipping some things there, and we'll back up and cover it there. But you played football in college, is that right?
Yeah, briefly. Yeah, I went to Marshall University down in Huntington, West Virginia. I was there on track scholarship, and then and went and played football, and that lasted for a season, and broke the arm, and all of a sudden you were an athlete one day, and now you're not.
Yeah, student the next.
You learn a lot about yourself.
And I think sports is a great way to learn about yourself, right? And probably set you up for success later on, probably all through life, even in the hospitality industry. Let's talk about that a little bit. Why the hospitality industry? What drew you into that? Or is it just the way life happened?
I've always been luckier than I have been good. And the way that worked, more or less, especially in the 80s, you're a football player or you were known as an athlete. People in the hospitality industry locally like to have you do some stuff. So alumni pick you up, put you into some things, and found out I had a decent knack for it. Did pretty well, so I changed what I was going to school for and kind of focused on that. Went forward, and that's just. So
where did the hospitality take you prior to joining the military?
All over. I shifted. I went back to Pittsburgh, worked in some bars and some restaurants, and did some things, got into the managerial side of that industry, and decided that it was better if we went south. So I went down and went to Florida. Got a job down there that ended up taking me through Pensacola and eventually to Tampa. And then, so 12, 15 years later, I found myself as basically a regional manager running around doing things and chef coats and stuff. And just.
So what was the moment that, you're doing well in the hospitality industry that you said, I think I'm going to make a big shift here at 40 and join the service, join the military?
what actually happened, I mean, and it's cliche to say it now, but it happened 9 years, before that. It was 9/11.
Yeah.
And growing up when I did, that was a gut punch that I was unprepared for. I was off that day. It was Tuesday morning. Remember it well. We can go into that, some other time. But it took everything that I thought I knew about us, about the world, about me, and it kind of shifted a little bit and made my priorities change quite a bit. Was not in a position at that time to do anything. It really wasn't a consideration. But it ate at me, and eventually I thought, well, if I can, I will.
Yeah.
Shot.
So when you went to talk to the recruiters and all that, did you talk to all the different branches, or did you know what you wanted to do right out the gate, coming to be the Ranger Regiment?
Well, I'd done some research, and the Army was the choice, and was the only choice because I was so old.
Right.
That was the only one that at the time, and there's always confusion. At the time, it was 42. They needed people when they'd up the age that you could do it. So the Army was the only.
What year was this?
This was 2009.
Okay.
2009. And as far as Ranger, my idea was, my thought was, if I was going to do something, I would never want to know, or not know, I should say, whether I could do something more.
Right.
So I really didn't think I had much of a chance, honestly, of making it to that organization, but I didn't want to sit back and go, I wonder if I could have done that later. So kind of aimed high, and for whatever reason, I made it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons you made it. A lot of guys, as long as you don't quit, and the older guys seem to be successful because they've grinded through something in their lives that some of these younger kids haven't done. So it helps you when you resiliency. It's cliche to say that, but when you get in that situation, you're like, well, this is really, no, I'm going to get paid no matter what. I know where my next meal is coming from. It's not as difficult as some of the stuff that you went through earlier in your life. And we'll get into that a little bit. Before we jump into it, we'll get into the question that brings everybody in here, right? So with your experience joining the Army earlier or later in life, what would your definition of vulnerability be?
I was thinking about this, yesterday, and I mean, the definition is the definition, and I've watched, and people much smarter than me have some great perspectives on what that is. I really think that vulnerability is a realization. I don't think that you're any more or less vulnerable if you choose to ignore it.
That's true.
I think if you give yourself the opportunity to have other people help you and to learn a little bit about yourself when you allow the vulnerability you already have,
right,
to be exposed. There's a quote I always liked. I have no idea who said it. He said, every man has three characters. That which he exhibits, that which he has, and that which he thinks he has. And I think that when you're vulnerable with another human being, you get to see a little bit of each of those parts and maybe know yourself a little better than you did. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully stated, right? And I agree 100%. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to what the definition of vulnerability is. I just everybody has their little own definition. I just know it's not weakness, in its greatest form. So, so you came in the military, 40. We'll get back to that. And you've stayed, right? And you're going to make the career out of it. I assume you've gone this far. You might as well, right? So, what has kept you in service this long? What about the 75th has kept you here? What have you loved or not loved at some points? But why did you decide to make this massive career move and then stick with it? Where I saw so many people that were about your age in their 40s come in, do their 4 years, and then go back out to the industry side.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fascinating they allow me to do this in the first place. So I remember, when we got through Aspen and they gave the tambourine, and the thought in my head was, wow, if nothing else, for a day. I had this. I was this for a day. And then as it started to go forward, again, every day you got to prove that you're able to be there, that you deserve to be there. And I love that. And yeah, I think as I grew up, as it were, in the regiment.
Yeah, right.
I love the fact that there was never a time through most that somebody next to you would say, that's not my job.
Right.
That everybody had the same goal, and that no one ever wanted to be the point of failure. No one was ever going to it was never going to be me that caused this not to work. And that's contagious, that you don't want to give that up. And I think it becomes a little bit of who you are.
Right.
You kind of shift how you think. And as it's gotten later in the career, as I move into the more administrative portion, having the opportunity to take somebody that's younger and teach them something, whether it's about the job or whether it's about life or whatever it is, being able to kind of shift that coin and give it back is what keeps me wanting to do it.
Right. Right. So Like we spoke before we started, I've only had Doc Conway and the chaplains on here that were infantry types in this field. So for those out there, I know some people listen to this that are thinking about joining the service, and there's a lot of options when you're in that recruiting office, and it depends on what they're selling you. And you've made your career as a communicator. And it's not as simple as that. Especially once you get in our organization, it's much more broad than just a communicator. What does it mean to be a communicator in our organization?
Full disclosure, I never searched to be a communicator. I didn't go to the recruiting office. Yeah. This is what I want to do. At my age, that's what I was allowed to do. It has turned out to be one of the best, career moves that was put upon me that I've done. Versatility, I think is a huge part of this. I think for someone coming in, the amount of education that you're required to get, the things that you're required to know, the broad spectrum of communication that we have to work with, it doesn't really matter what letter comes after your MOS. In our job, we have to be pretty, at least well-versed in a lot of different things. And a lot of those things don't fall directly in what you would think. Again, this is not my job per se. But it has to get done. Right. And I think that teaches people a lot about what they're able to do, about what they're able to expand upon. And then you still have to ranger. Yeah. You still have to get out and do the ranger stuff. So I think it's great. And a lot of opportunities that come with that too. Outside of the military. Yeah.
And just for some perspective for somebody who doesn't know, you're a 25?
I'm a 25 uniform.
25 uniform. So that's the letter numbering behind his MOS, his occupation specialty, right? A communicator in the Ranger Regiment is an interesting job. And I'll say that from an infantry leader standpoint, because Brian didn't come up trained on how to troubleshoot everybody's computers in the office, set up all these IT networks. But I tell you who gets called when they're not working. It's this guy right here, right? I don't know. I've had many times I've had to call Brian I remember I was a platoon sergeant at ACO and say, hey, my printer's not working. That is way outside of his realm. And it's something I should have been able to do. But, Brian, that's just one of the things he said about the regiment. It doesn't matter your job. Everybody kind of moves to the sound of the guns. Doesn't matter what it is. And you help each other get to where you need to be. It doesn't matter what your MOS is or what your code is. And I think that's what keeps people here. That's what keeps people within the organization. So with your time, you've been in the regiment 11 years, 12 years, right, of your time. Over that time, you've deployed multiple times, numerous times. You came in at the height of, you've been at the height of the last 20 years of it. You came in the middle of that. What was your hardest day in uniform so far in the 75th?
There have been a lot of moments, there's always a challenge that you were not prepared for, in some way, shape, or form. I don't know that I could specifically say that, on August 9th of whatever year that was the day. I look at it as a little broader term, and I explain it a lot of times to my guys that it's a double-edged coin. I know this really isn't answering the question as much, but there are moments that I remember, snippets, bits and pieces that I could say, man, I wish my kids could see through my eyes what I see right now, because nobody gets to see this.
Right.
Nobody gets to see what I see. And the other end of that coin, as far as the hard part is there are moments, many of them, where I go, I hope my kids go through their whole life and never have to see
this. Yeah.
But I don't think that there's one moment that was the hardest day. I have failed daily, hundreds of times, and some of those failures have been bigger than others, and I've had to reevaluate, and I remember those like we all do.
Yeah.
But not one day, honestly, just a lot of lessons, a lot of learning that were hard.
Yeah. Is there a favorite day that sticks out?
It's funny. I was thinking about that, and there's a lot of those too. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of times when I've just been overwhelmed with the fact that I'm allowed to stand in the places that I stand. Right. But one that sticks out, which is just the funniest thing, is our basic. We get in basic training, and they gave us uniforms and boots and all the stuff, and they herded us through, and they gave me my name tapes. And I saw my name, at the time in ACU, grandma's couch got patterned in there. But I was just overwhelmed.
Yeah,
I'm allowed to do this. Yeah, I have the honor to serve here, and that sticks out for me. A very, very mundane thing. Right. I remember that a lot.
I think people that spend a significant time in the service, they have those little moments. And I think you're also fortunate when coming in later in life, you have a better understanding of how to kind of enjoy the moment, I think, right? When you're 18, you don't enjoy the moment as much. You're waiting for the somebody to say the work's over so you can crack a beer and go chase women downtown, right? But as you get older, you start to relish in the times a little bit more. And I know that's one thing I've always enjoyed about you. Either we've been on target or whatever, you always had this positive attitude. I can't like this. I can't believe we're here right now doing this right now when I could be, doing something else that's definitely not as fun. You're right. I wish my kids could see some of the things that we've seen, and not just my kids, but just people in general. Right? They just don't. Nobody can ever understand unless you've been there, and you can't explain it to them. But as soon as you get around you or me or people that have done it, there's just this thing, you all kind of know what you've been through. So that it's a very special place that we've been fortunate enough to serve in. And, I'll steal it from you. I had the same moment in reverse last week when I took off my uniform, my duty uniform, for what will be the last time. I'll wear my blues one more time for the retirement ceremony. But I laid it there on my bed, which is right there, and I looked at that tab and that scroll and that U.S. Army, and I was just like, "Oh, wow, this is over. This is crazy." So enjoy it is what I'm saying. Enjoy the years that you have left, because it'll be gone before you know it.
We talk about that a lot of work and try to convey that. Like, you forget how much of this you become.
Yeah.
How much you identify with what it is, who we are, what we do. Yeah. And it's not a bad thing, but I think it's difficult for a lot of people, which is why everybody gets out and, grows a beard, puts it on Facebook, tells everybody how much they miss them, because you don't have that. It's not that you're not as close with other people, because you are, but there's shared experiences that other people cannot understand.
Yeah.
Unless
and you can't just walk into work the next day and be with somebody who understands, right? I'll transition, do whatever job I do outside. I'm not going to, unless I go work back on binning, which is possible. I'm not scared to go work at range control. I can say left limit, right limit with the best of them. But if you go work in the corporate world, you're not going to just walk into any room and somebody understands what that 12-mile foot march was like last week, or what it was like on that live fire exercise when it was 40 degrees and sleeting outside. Those are moments that only we will understand, or the time where, you rode in on a 47 in Afghanistan in January. Those are moments you can't replicate. And I think you do a good job. I think I've always seen you do a good job of making sure your guys understand. Try to understand that the best they can, is hold on to these moments the best you can.
And again, another thing I fail at, I'm sure, all the time, but try to get people to if you're not complaining about your job, you don't have a job.
That's right.
But try to understand what you have and what's around you. And I don't think anybody ever can. I don't think, even I try, but I don't think you can live in the moment. I don't think you can stop and snapshot that, whether it's with your kids or it's the job. You try, but you can't appreciate it until it's past.
You're right. And then it's some sort of little, something triggers it at some point where you do remember that time, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's you put your body armor back on and you're like, oh, that shoulder hurts again. Oh, I remember when it hurt on this day. There's those little moments when you did try to be intentional in the moment, but it passes. But then there's those other moments later that trigger that memory, which is most of the time they're great memories. Sometimes they're not so great, right?
But the irony is that even the bad memories are sometimes the good memories.
Yeah.
Like, you don't remember the times when everything was
That's
great.
right. That's 100%. But I can remember all the hard ones, right? I don't remember the ones that went perfect. I remember the ones where I failed at something, or it was 25 below, or the tough ones. It's so funny.
I think it's just funny though how often I remember those bad ones fondly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't remember them in a bad. I may have failed. This may have gone wrong. That was it. But there's something about that moment that sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's transition a little bit out of the military realm into the family realm. You have three kids now, all since you got in service, right? You had kids later in life, so you have a different perspective on it, having kids. What's it like being a Ranger and a dad?
Well, I think, part of that, and I don't think it's necessarily even Ranger, but just military in general. One of the biggest challenges is being able to shift from being Sarge to being dad, making sure, and again, fail at that all the time, but making sure you're not taking too much of work with you home, not taking sure too much of your family back and forth. It's a balance like anything else. I've been extremely blessed. My wife is a 10 times better human being than I am, and by far a better parent. She checks my left and right quite often when I'm going off on there. But I think I think it's the biggest challenge for anybody is balancing the things you have to do in work and then balancing the things that you want to do and trying to be present for both of those.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. There is no balance, right? There's always the pursuit of balance. You're hoping to gain balance. As long as you're pursuing it, that's good. And you're very, very right in saying it's important to have a spouse or that significant other that makes sure you're trying to maintain that balance or can call you on it. And I know your wife, and I know she's not scared to give her opinion of what Brian's doing. And Kate's the same way. So we're blessed to have the women that we have in our lives and the kids. So you grew up in the 80s, I would say. Like you grew up in life, really.
Yeah. High school.
So it was different then.
Yes.
You didn't have a cell phone in your pocket, thankfully. Yeah. That's what I say. Thankfully, my mom couldn't call me all the time and figure out where I was. What is your take on now in this new age raising kids?
It poses a significant challenge, obviously, right? That balance to be maintained on how much they're able to do socially and making sure they're growing that way and then making sure they're protected as much as you can as a parent. I still think, though, that challenge is generational.
You're right.
Maybe it was a hula hoop before, I don't know, whatever it was before. But I think kids need your time.
Yeah.
The more time you're able to give them, and it's easy to say, harder to do.
Yes.
When you're working, when you're doing these things. But if they have your time, they're less likely to need that. And so, again, you strive for it and you fail. You try to let them have a little bit of space in there. But I think anything, it's a balance that you try to get to and fail. I don't think I've ever looked back and been like, I knocked it out of the dad part today. I was really awesome.
Right.
I don't have those moments more often. I'm like, probably should have done it a little different. But I think as long as you're trying and the kids see that, I think that it gives them enough base that they're not going to seek the things out that we're scared of them seeking out.
Yeah. And I think it's unique in what we do, or I used to do for a living, and what you do for a living. We're kind of a parent at work sometimes. Like the same principles are applied to what we do at work. So we get to take it home. We're like a dad 24/7.
The same language. I use different language sometimes. The guys at work, God love them. They know this. But I will speak to them the same way I speak to my 10-year-old with the exact same verbiage because that's what's required at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's, you're going to dad different though. I'm going to, and my guys definitely think I'm dad at work because I'm so old.
Yeah, right.
But talking to them in a certain way, and again, that's that thing of trying to shut that up.
Yeah.
And talk to your kids because obviously we use some colorful conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. There is some different dialect you have to use at the house. But yeah, being a dad's great. You said it's trying to be intentional. Give them the time you can give them, and set the example. You got to set the example. Basic leadership principles apply to being a father as they do being a ranger, an army person, or working anywhere in the world. You're setting the example for others to follow. It's just interesting in this age, Jackson, we fought the cell phone thing. Like, you're not getting a phone. And then one day he got off the bus, we weren't home, and Jackson's standing out in front of our cameras, jumping up and down, saying, "Hey, I can't get in the house." And we were kind of like, well, I guess it's time we need to have a way to communicate with him. So, and it's generational. Everybody had their thing, right? And we just have to adjust to it and make the best of it, make the best humans we can to hopefully, I still think we live in the greatest country on earth. I don't think I know because I've been out to other ones, but yeah.
I think, well, we can deep dive into that. Yeah, we definitely have it a lot better than we think we do.
Yeah. So a couple of things you wish someone had told you before you had kids, because you were in your 40s when you had kids, your first kids, and you had a lot of life lessons. But what's that? A couple of things you're like, dang, I wish I would have known that.
It's funny. I found out in between phase 1 and phase 2 of RASP that Quinn was going to be a boy. So we didn't have a lot of people make it through that particular class, so we had a small little group at the end as we went through RASP 2, and I was taking notes from everybody and asking them, and I actually put on a little piece of paper and things to teach my son. So I was trying to seek that stuff out before, and I think the only thing I guess that I would have liked to know was what effect, what magnitude that whole process was going to have on me. Yeah. Now my priorities I don't really remember what I was like, thank God, before I had kids.
Right.
Because my priorities and everything changed so much. And I don't think that I was prepared for that, but it's been a blessing to see.
Yeah, that's true. it's hard when somebody asks that question that's having a baby or something. It's like, what do I need to know? And I just like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know what I can tell you because it's kind of like going on a combat operation. You plan, you do an opward, you plan again, you do a ramp side brief, you go wheels up, and then you infill, and nothing goes the way you had planned it, right? So you just got to be flexible, and again, just be there, be present the best you can.
Yeah, I would never presume to tell somebody what this is the thing you need to know because I still try to figure that out.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
it's been great. It's a great ride.
It is a great ride. I guess the one thing I do say to everybody is I said, get some sleep now before it's born, because especially if you're in a leadership position within our organization, the 5:15 meeting is still going to be at 5:15 even after your paternity leave. So sleep while you can, right? Which we're terrible about doing anyway. So let's move on to the marriage, right? Marriage in our organization is tough on our spouses, I think, more so than it is on us, right? Because I always thought as deployments is kind of the break, right?
It's the family appreciation trip.
Yeah, it is. It is a family appreciation trip, right? So do you guys have a secret to keep maintaining the marriage?
I mean, I'm not the spouse to speak to about the secret of dealing with me.
Yes,
that's really what we're talking about here. It fascinates me daily that someone puts up with me. Like, I'm not an easy individual, and I don't think most of us are. So, she might know what that is. I do think that it does take a special kind of person to sustain themselves in this.
Yeah,
and it doesn't make them a bad person if they can't. It just takes somebody that can do this with us. Like, we get to go away and basically play and do things.
Yeah,
and they are just day in, day out doing the same stuff, taking care of the kids, the house, everything.
Yeah,
my entire life is run by that individual, so that I can do the things I do. And we've seen it where if you don't have that person there, it's very difficult to maintain the pace that we do. So,
yeah, absolutely.
There's whatever secret it is get lucky and pick the right person. Like, you hope that somebody
hope the right person picks you.
You hope that the person you fall in love with has these qualities, and
yes,
and you just get. I'm very grateful that they do.
Yeah, it's our spouses are amazing, right? It's amazing what they do while we're gone. It's amazing what you say when we go play is constant worry for them.
Yes.
The more we're playing, the more anxiety they have back here at home, right? And we don't realize that. We don't appreciate it. I know I didn't for years. We're just blessed to have the ones we have. And I know I've always seen you go on the marriage retreats and you're very intentional about maintaining your marriage when you're back here. And the ones that I see fail are not that intentional, right?
It's like it takes work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the thing that people get not want confused on, but don't want to hear, because it doesn't brief well.
Right.
But you have to work on it. You have to sit back every once in a while and go, someone was wrong in this argument, and this time it was me.
Yeah.
And kind of have that feeling. And if you don't, that eventually will erode what you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes work.
It does. It does take work, but just like anything, if you put in the work, you'll be rewarded with something, right? If you put in the right work.
100%. I think, not to bring it back to this, but we talk about vulnerability, and I see that in our guys at work. It's a hard thing to do with their spouse, and the persona that we have, and the image that we get, and how we portray ourselves to everybody else. If you take that home, it's very difficult if you're not vulnerable to that person. If you're not able to tell them the things that bother you, the things that scare you, then you're not going to have that trust.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that build that you can, because you're trying to be somebody you're not.
Right. You're right. That vulnerability is the gateway to conversation and communication and all of that stuff. And, as a communicator, like, it all starts with communication. If you can't get comms with the jock, all hell starts breaking loose, right? And you got to figure it out. So it's no different in intermarriage. So same question with your kids. Anything before you got married that you'd throw out there that you wish you knew?
Yeah, I mean, probably how much work it is.
Yeah.
A lot of that. What a great ride it is. Like being able to, and just like the job. You look back, you go through the dailies, you go through the stuff, you're doing this, and then you look back and you go, wow, what a great 5 years, what a great decade. I didn't realize how fun this was going to be.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, that's true. So yeah, we've talked about marriage, we've talked about our kids, your work. So, and all of that, if you could go back to, we're going to do this in two versions, right? Two versions of you, because you're more experienced. We'll say that, right? Than most people. If you go back to that 18-year-old Brian, what would you tell him before pursuing college football or industry life? What a piece of advice would you give him?
It would be the most wasted time travel trip in history. Because at 18, I was the most selfish individual that I could know. I don't think that I would have taken whatever. But Twain said, when someone comes to me advice, I find out what kind of advice they want and I give it to them.
Right.
And that's kind of what would have had to happen with me back then. I don't think I would have listened because I knew more than anyone.
Right.
At that point, which is always what fascinates me with guys at work. Same age I was physically, I was there, but I was an idiot. And watching these guys make the same decision, it took me a couple extra decades.
Yeah.
It's always fascinating. I don't think I would have been able to give up. I would have told myself to do things differently.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have listened.
Yeah. Well, that's good and true, I think, of a lot of us, right? And then that 40-year-old private specialist. You probably came in as a specialist.
I came as private, yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I lied about it. Yeah.
What advice would you give either that person or that other 40-year-old out there that's saying, man, I wish I had?
Well, as far as the 40-year-old that's out there, it's funny. You're always too old to do something until you're older.
Yeah.
Like you're too old at 25 to go back to school. You're too old at 30 to change your career. You're too old until that 30-year-old is a 40-year-old and you realize that you weren't that old. So I guess I would just say do whatever it is you want to do and don't think that you're too old because
you're not. Yeah.
You're just not.
That's true.
To do those things. But advice beforehand, I don't know that I would have done things much different at that point. I was pretty set on what I wanted to do. Had I known more about the Army, I might have made other choices, but I still want to be where I'm at.
Yeah.
And through whatever luck or fate would have it that it got me here, I don't know that I want to mess with any of that.
Yeah.
Go back and give different advice.
Yeah. That's true. I know from knowing you, I've always used you as an example, right? When I've had somebody complaining about the job or wanting to leave, I always say, Brian's over there crushing it. And you're whining about what you have to do. He's 45 or 48 at the time. You've always been an inspiration to me. I've used you in my leadership styles to inspire others. And I think the biggest thing I always got out of you whether I was talking to a service member or somebody who wished they had done it or, the time passed, you're like, I would have been a Ranger, and I say, well, I know this guy who did it. So I think you're the ultimate example of, if you put your mind to it and you want to get something accomplished and you're dedicated to it, age doesn't really matter. You can do it. I saw a 48-year-old go through Ranger School when I was a Ranger School instructor. Age is just a number, right? You got to obviously make some changes in your life and some, and the way maybe you take care of yourself for a little bit, but you can accomplish a lot of things, age irrelevant.
I've always said that to your point that if you have physical ability to do something and you choose not to do it, it's just because you prioritize something else. If it's a high enough priority,
yes.
You whatever it is, if you don't do a thing, it's because you put something else as more important.
Oh, you're right. It all comes down to what your priorities are, right? It really does. Well, we're going to close out the show with a new gimmick.
I like it.
All right. So, not done it. This is a Christmas gift that I received. It's a interview deck, right? And it's just got random questions on it. And we'll do 2 each.
All right.
We'll just draw and give it our best shot. I have no idea what's coming in here. I looked at these a little bit about a month ago, and if anything happened a month ago, I already forgot. Or I forgot about 5 minutes later. So I have no idea what we're going to get into here, but it should be interesting. But I'll let you start. I'll answer the first one here, and we'll alternate. And we'll do 4 total, 2 between us, and we'll see what happens here. All right, I'll put it right there. Just pick the top one up there off the deck, and we'll send it hot.
All right, here we go. What is the main quality you think makes a great parent?
Oh, right in line with the show, right? And I think we've already kind of talked about it, right? It's being present as much as you can, right? If you're not present, you can't set the example. If you're not present, you won't be there when they need you, right? And it comes down to those priorities, and they all come back to being present, in my opinion.
I think to add to your answer, that it's funny, as a parent too, you try to get those teachable moments. Right?
Yeah.
You have this pinnacle thing where you're like, I'm going to, and they don't pay attention.
I know.
And then I'm sure it's a moment where I was not probably at my best. That's going to etch themselves in your head. And that's what I think about that too. I don't remember things that my grandfather told me when they were trying to.
Right.
I remember what they did away from the ball. And I think that's why the more of those opportunities you get with being present, the more chances you have to at least balance out.
And I think that's another thing, the teachable moments. It might not resonate then, but it might resonate later. They might think back on it. Because I know that's through my military career. I've thought of like, I knew at the moment I didn't like the feedback I had got or whatever it may have been. But 10 years later, I reflected on that and I remember that. And it became the teachable moment when it needed to be again.
For sure.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll get it to you. See if you might get something off the wall or something, a softball like that. Oh, this is good. This is really good. Who is the best female role model in your life?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked about this before, and my wife, I mean, hands down, and not just because of what she does for the kids, but just who she is. She teaches herself how to do things all the time, and I don't. Like I'm stagnant in a lot of things that I know what I know, but she teaches herself to sew, and she teaches, she cooks wonderfully, does all these different things, makes clothes, started a garden, just continually looking for something more.
Yeah.
What that shows for the kids and for me, is up your game
a
little bit. My mother's wonderful. Love her. She was a great role model for me my whole life. Again, just the parents, but having the ability to watch my wife work her children, and love them the way she does is humbling.
Yes.
For me.
It is inspiring to watch that. And I think you hit on something there. Lifelong learning. She's learning and doing things, and the importance of, sometimes people equate lifelong learning to lifelong education in an institution, when lifelong learning is just always trying to get better at something or learn something new, learn a new skill. And that'll help. That helps people as parents, as wives, as mothers, and a great and smart answer, by the way. Always saying the spouse, right?
Yeah, you can't go wrong.
No, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong.
That's really good. Okay, it's kind of off. Would you ever sign a prenuptial agreement?
Would I ever sign a prenup? That's a loaded question, right? Oh man, I want to say no, right? Because I've never had enough stuff to sign a prenuptial agreement, right?
What if it wasn't you? What if she wanted you to sign it?
Oh, what if she wanted me to sign it? Man, that is. I guess I probably would.
Yeah.
I would have. Because I don't hold the value in those things as much as I do, the love and all the mushy stuff that, but I guess I would sign it if, the circumstances are right. I wouldn't put too much thought into it. What about you?
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think twice about it if it was something I would do. Obviously, we'll not be in that position.
No, I have that ship has sailed for me. So, yeah, I won't have to worry about it. All right, last one here. Oh, that's good. Easy. Would you travel to space if possible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk space now, so it's part of my job. I think that would be, I don't know that I would do a straight hand, kind of come back down, but I think if you had the opportunity to explore something new, but I think that's also inherent in the personality types that kind of do our job.
Yeah.
Like, you want to try something nobody really gets to do, and we're like, yeah, even if it sucks, like, I want to try that. I think that would be, it'd be a really neat experience.
Yeah. I think it goes right along the lines of, would you ever throw yourself out of a perfectly good aircraft over a blacked out drop zone with a 100-pound sack hung between your legs and hit the tarmac? Or go to space? I'm choosing go to space every time now over that last one.
Yeah, I'm not going to get hurt worse if I fall from space.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's in our nature to do things that are a little bit irregular, right? We're wired that way. We are. Brian, I appreciate you coming on. It's always great to talk to you. I say it again, and I know you don't like it, but you're an inspiration to a lot of people. If you haven't seen, there's a YouTube video that I had produced about this guy that I brought to the command. He's well known in the YouTube space, like 300,000 views. But I mean, it's not rare to have older people older people, I'm sorry, come into our organization, more mature people. But it is rare that they stick around as long as you and move to the levels that you've moved. And I think you've impacted more people than you will ever know, me being one of them. Appreciate you coming on here, being vulnerable, having a discussion. And I hope the Steelers win today for you.
I do. I like having low expectations.
Yeah. Well, it's easy to have low expectations of the Steelers right now.
It is. Yes. So it's the team. I'll be all donned up waiting for my. I hope the same for you and your 49ers.
Yeah. Go 49ers. That when this comes out tomorrow, you might not hear from me next week, depending on how that 49ers Cowboys games go, because I'm having some flashbacks to 1994-95. So thanks for listening. For all you out there watching, be sure to hit that like button, share, subscribe, do all that. And it's great to be here. Great to see you. Thanks again, Brian. And we'll check in with you guys next week. Later.